a lot of people in my generation, we are jaded. We're also pushed away from it. I mean, we had this past year the biggest revival of Christianity that we've had in decades with the younger generation. An Appeal to Heaven was a flag that was created in 1775 and commissioned for 6 of the U.S.'s naval ships. And the reason behind the flag was we cannot simply appeal to man. Unfortunately, the loudest ones from your generation were also very destructive. And so it is a blessing to be on a show like this with you, who is taking a stand and making that voice so that other people might not be afraid to come and speak out.
Hi everyone, Elaine Beck here. So happy to be here today again, and I have a very special guest. He's just a kid, although I've been teasing him and telling him he's starting to look a little bit like a young man, So I'm so blessed to have you here. Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'll give the little elevator pitch for all the watchers and listeners and viewers and everything. I'm Braeden Sorbo. I'm a 23-year-old actor and author. I just released my second book, Embrace Masculinity, Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down, and my latest film, Jesus Freaks.
I saw you with those Jesus Freaks. I was wondering, are you one of them?
Oh, sister, you got Jesus all over you.
So the film was written by a good friend of mine, Nina May, and so we filmed it last year in Culpeper, Virginia, which I've never been to before and haven't been back since, but it was a beautiful little small town. It was wonderful, great people there. And so, the film has been a long time running. It's a true story based on how Nina met her husband, Colby, when they were at college. And so I actually played her husband's younger self.
Oh, how cool. How wonderful is that? That had to have been fun. Now, so how did you make this friend to begin with?
So Nina and her husband Colby have been family friends of the Sorbos forever, and she's been doing movies with her production house for years. And so when she reached out to my parents, she said, "Hey, I'm filming a movie. It's going to be a surprise anniversary gift," because it was their 50th anniversary gift, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, to be fair, that's kind of a cool thing. Your wife makes a movie of the story of how you met as an anniversary gift. That's pretty special. Colby's a lucky guy. But she reached out to my parents and she said, "We're looking for someone to play the younger Colby. He has to be college aged." And I was considering if Braeden wouldn't mind auditioning, because they'd been to the house once or twice before. And so she'd met me and was like, Braeden would fit perfectly in this role. And so I got to audition and I survived the process and got selected.
Well, I had a suspicion that Nina was an older woman because I had an Aunt Nina when I was a young girl. And my Aunt Nina and Uncle Leo were my favorite aunt and uncles out of 17. And it was just absolutely amazing. I hadn't seen that name in years. And so I had a suspicion that she was not a kid. Yes. So that is really cool, though, that she can tell that story now and that it's out in a movie. I can't wait to see it. I haven't had the opportunity. I didn't think it was out yet.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you to see it as well. I actually haven't seen the full finished version. I saw an uncut, the raw edited version, but I wanted to go see it in theaters, like with a group of my friends. So I've been withholding from watching the final product, but I am excited as well. There is another screening that they're planning at the Bible Museum, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought somebody had said at the Bible Museum, and that's why I'd ask. Because usually they do a red carpet edition somewhere, and that gives it a little bit more credibility. Not that you guys need it. I mean, your whole family are just wonderful actors, and the fact that everything that you do is led by God and it's based on Christian stories and reality and truth. That's what makes it exciting for me to see it, because I know that you're going to put out something that everybody is going to be touched by mentally and emotionally. And so those are the kind of stories that help us to get back to reality. I'll ask you a question. Do you feel that the younger generations are a bit jaded by the events of the day because they hear them every day. The murders, the destruction, the hate, the vindictiveness, the political agendas that seem to be nothing but more than, there's good in it and there's good things happening, but the ugly is still, they're trying to keep it in front of the people all the time. What do you think, Braeden, as a young man?
Yeah, well, the media they make their money off of selling fear, as we all know. So when we look at the mainstream media and they're perpetuating nothing but violence, and that's what they're glorifying, of course, it's going to continue with this cycle. And so, yeah,
Right.
A lot of people in my generation, we are jaded. We're also pushed away from it. I mean, we had this past year the biggest revival of Christianity that we've had in decades with the younger generation. We have more men returning to the faith than ever before because previously women outnumbered men in the churches, specifically the Protestant churches, for
Right.
decades. And so this
Right.
past year, 2024, the largest revival has taken place. Men are returning to Catholic and Orthodox churches. Women are returning to Protestant churches. People are just returning to God in general. And I think that the
Amen.
reason for that is because the younger generations have naturally sort of rebelled against authoritative figures. And so in the
Right.
70s and 80s, that was with the free love movement and hardcore rock and roll, sex and drugs and all that stuff. But now that all of those things have become mainstream, it's almost rebellious for you to not take part in them. And so a lot of people are realizing, oh, there is no fulfillment in these things. I'm going to rebel against what the media is perpetuating, what they're telling me to do, by going and doing the complete opposite, which ironically is establishing and strengthening that moral foundation that Paul writes in Romans 1 that we already have inscribed on our hearts.
Right, exactly. Well, that's very well put, as always. And I agree that, the young people nowadays, they're looking for something to hold on to, and they've watched the older generations fall away from God and where it's gotten them. And they're like, no, I don't want to be there. That, and I think a lot of them were raised in families, sadly, and stuff, that there's more broken families than there are whole families. Therefore, they're seeking something more powerful and wonderful in their lives. And when they see young men like yourself and others that, have stood up to all of that and been raised in good families, and they see the rewards that you're receiving and your wonderful demeanor and attitude, they're going to seek what is fulfilling. And they see that in people like yourself. So you represent them well, and I hope you continue to do that. And I think with this movie, I can't wait to see it. Can you give us any little, anything other that might pique people's interests?
Yes, I can. I can give a little bit of a back. Let's see. I'll give a little insider information. There's some pretty crazy things that happen during this movie, and this is all according to Nina's own personal testimony. So
Right.
all of the events that you're going to be seeing, except for the very end, because it's more of a prophetic kind of message at the very end. But without spoiling too much, you can expect to see some pretty crazy things that all come from Nina's testimony herself. I want to touch on, though, really quick, because you mentioned the young people going away, coming from broken homes, finding God. If people could see, I have a flag behind me. It says an appeal
Yes.
to heaven. Now, a lot of people don't know what that means, which is why I ended up getting this as my backdrop. An appeal to heaven was a flag that was created in 1775 and commissioned for 6 of the U.S.'s naval ships. And the reason behind the flag was we cannot simply appeal to man, because they were trying to appeal to the British government with no avail. And so they created this flag as essentially, if you cannot appeal to man, you must make an appeal to God, an appeal to heaven. And so
Right.
a lot of people, like you touched on, are leaving these broken homes and seeing what's happened to the generations before them, the ones who left Christianity or are devoid of faith entirely. And they're
Right.
realizing that it is not fruitful. And so they're essentially making an appeal to heaven and finding fulfillment in it.
Yes, I've had a flag like that for years. I heard about that when I went to Wall Builders, where they have all the historic pieces from the former beginnings of this country that they're hiding from the young people nowadays. So it's really nice to see you displaying that and telling that story. We will definitely use that as even a small clip to put out so that people understand that. And thank you for bringing that up, because I think it is important to understand that. And tell me which president it was under that happened.
Well, this would have been George Washington, but before he was even president.
Yes, Washington was the one that requested a flag that spoke to God. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's just amazing. And of course, the educational institutions and so many people have been trying to keep the young people from understanding that God has been a part of our history from day one. And that, clear back when Washington was in, he knew that if he didn't appeal to God and the heavens, that things would not ever get better, and they could not get through the trials they had. Because there's one thing we can always be certain of, that the Bible says there will always be trials. So the fact that things aren't perfect has nothing to do with, how good or bad we are. It has to do with the fact that we live in a world where there's always going to be the fight between good and evil. And the good way outweighs the evil if we allow it, if we accept it, if we open our hearts to it. And so it's really nice to see a young man like yourself really putting that out front and really wanting people to understand that. Yeah. And keeping that in your backdrop all the time. I love that. Very, very impressive. And what other messages would you like to give the young people currently?
Well, I would love to expand on the George Washington with the faith that we're talking about. And that is something that a lot of people, while they're coming to the faith, are still, as baby Christians, getting used to, is this idea of faith alone. Even demons have faith. St. Augustine, one of the church fathers, says this. He goes, the demons have faith in God. They fear and tremble at his name, but they themselves are not saved. And so the founders, like Washington, realized that faith requires action at the same time. That while there are going to be trials, like you mentioned, life is not going to be perfect just because you say you're good with God. It's going to get worse. But if you have true faith, I like to think of the grace of God, the salvation that we receive, as a river. Right? And so we can stand on the riverbank and reject it entirely, and the water will flow past and we will never get in. Or we can have faith to get into the water, and then we must continue to swim with the current. So it is not enough simply to just go, well, I'm going to get in the water and just sit here. We need to make action. We need to take action. And so that is what's happening with my generation, is we're finally taking action, specifically the young men, which is fantastic. I want to say a little bit of a pessimistic, and then I'll finish it with an optimistic ending. But we had, in this past election, the biggest divide politically that we've ever had between the genders. Young women have historically always voted more blue and young men more red, but this past election was the widest that chasm has ever been. And so I like to say the pessimistic part is that's not a great statistic, but the optimistic part is, because of this return to faith, we can also expect a return to traditional values, which is why I wrote my book as a guide on traditional values, which I'll shout it out, sorbostudios.com, if people want to go check it out. But this idea that the men are going to dig their heels in and they're going to fight to keep tradition alive through the scriptures is a beautiful thing, and something that we need to acknowledge as a true and worthy sacrifice on the behalf of these young men.
Well, that's so well put, but the part that really struck me was when you talked about taking action, because it's been 6.5 years ago now, because you and I have discussed this before, that God gave me a vision of what to do to bring the Christians together in the nation. And what that was is he said, quit the talking, quit sitting around and moaning about how things are, quit complaining, quit just, reading books and talking. Let's take action. Mm-hmm. I want you to take action in everything. And I've seen that grow now over the last 6.5 years. And I see what we are doing to take action. I see what you are doing to take action. I know that the latest thing that we're doing right now, in order to help your generation, is that I've come up with something that God gave me called Wisdom Warriors, because that's who we are. The people of the older generation, Nina, and her family. We are people that have already lived all those years. We've built our relationship with Christ in many instances. We are the ones that have lived out the history. We built the country. We fought the wars. We've done all of this kind of stuff. And now we need to share that with the young people. I love it when I talk to people like you because, there's over 50 years between us. And those 50 years are something that I cherish and that you will cherish someday when it's your turn. And in the meantime, we have to love you guys through the trials that you will go through by helping you understand this is the greatest country on earth. People do have the ability to have freedom, but you have to take action and fight for it. So our action right now as seniors, I'm going to be working with the seniors across the nation to share our stories so that young people can understand that like Nina and her story, we all have them and you can grow with them. You can understand the love of God by hearing. It's just like testimonies. Christ says to share how you became a Christian and why you're a Christian so that other people will want to be that. Well, we have all these stories of why our lives are the way they are and why we have benefited from God over the years because we opened that door. We gave our life to Him and we allowed Him to step in and lead and guide us and go before us. And that's what we want for the young people. So I'm anxious to get to know Nina and the other seniors of this country. And I love that she's already telling her story and the way she's doing it. And I just think it's amazing. So I hope that as people watch the show and the older ones will understand that they have a gift that they need to give to the young people. And that is their life stories so that they understand the true beauty and freedom of a country that so many people have, like you said, the media's tried to cause division and hate and anger. And instead that we can love one another. And as parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, it is our privilege to be able to share with the young people and to get them through.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I would love more of that to happen. I want more people like you and Nina to be out speaking because, unfortunately, the loudest ones from your generation were also very destructive. And so it is a blessing to be on a show like this with you, who is taking a stand and making that voice so that other people might not be afraid to come and speak out. There's a great analogy I like to use of a man dancing at a concert and he's just by himself having a great time, jumping around, and everyone's sort of looking at him like he's crazy. And all of a sudden another guy wearing a green shirt walks up and starts dancing with him. And within seconds, a crowd is formed and it's a massive party. And so I like to say that in order for somebody to be the second guy in the green shirt who gets everyone going, there has to be someone willing to stand alone and look like a fool.
I love that. That is a beautiful analogy. And I think that's true of every walk of life and all of the good things. We want to be that one person that wasn't afraid to stand up and speak for God and for your country and to dance, as you say, and start the music and start the motion and take the action. So thank you, Braeden. It's always such a pleasure to share with you and talk to you and to see you again. I can't wait till we run into each other again so that I can give you a big hug and tell you that, you and all the younger generation are the ones that keep all of us young and give us an opportunity to have something to look forward to every day, because that's what Wisdom Warriors is all about. We need to help you all grow so that you can live a beautiful and wonderful life and you have a free life to live in this beautiful country. So thank you again for being with me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I cannot wait to see you again as well.
All right. Well, God bless you, my dear. And thank you all for being on my show. And God bless you. And I'm always praying for you all. See you later.